Hello, my name is Kelly Bluen. Welcome to my mini mandala series. In these videos, I show you how to make beautiful little mandalas using a few basic tools. So I have a 6x6 sketchbook, a micron pen. This is a PN plastic nib pen. Any micron or fine liner pen will work. I have a coin, mine is a penny, that I'm going to use for the center of my mandala, some scrap paper, a graphite pencil, a blending tool, and an eraser. Okay, so I've got the scrap paper. I just ripped it off of another piece of paper, but I like having this straight edge here, and we're going to use this to mark our grid. Okay. So I like to begin with my coin and my pencil. So I just place this somewhere in the middle of my paper and I go around it. I'm going to go nice and light because I'm probably going to erase this circle later. Okay, if you have made these with me before, you know that the next step is to make a grid. However, I'm going to make it a little bit different this time. So I'm going to make the horizontal line, which I just try to find where I think the middle is, and I make a line going out both sides, nice and very, very light with my pencil. And then typically, or usually, I make a vertical line going up and down, but I'm not going to do that quite yet. Instead, I want to break this up into thirds. So I'm going to put a little dot in the middle, and I'm going to draw in some lines and see if I can, let me zoom in a little bit, see if I can divide that into thirds. Same thing down here. So we're putting in this X shape. And just check and make sure that these are similar in width and in size. This one's really wide, so maybe I'll move that line a little. It doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to extend these out. And again, I'm looking for sections that are the same width. So I should have 6 sections now. Typically we do 8. Okay, now I'm going to take my little piece of scrap paper and I'm going to put it on one of these lines right at the edge of the circle. So I'm going to set it right there. And I'm going to use this to mark where I want my next circle to go. And I think I want my next one to be about a pencil and a half width. So I'm going to make a mark right there. And I make it on my scrap paper and then right onto the paper I'm working on. Then I'm going to do another mark about the same width. So again, about a pencil and a half. It doesn't matter, these do not have to be the same size. It's okay. Put a mark on my scrap paper and a mark on my paper. And then I go to the next line and I do the same thing. I go right to the edge of that circle and I just mark these little sections. And this is going to help me place the next 2 circles in my grid. Okay. Now I need to connect these, and when I had my grid of 8, they're closer together and maybe a little bit easier to connect, but that's okay. We can do this as well. So I'm going to go from this one to this one. I'm going to give it a little bit of curve to try to match the roundness of the previous one. Then I go this way, I give it a little bit of a curve. I'm doing this very lightly in pencil so that I can adjust it if I need to. All right, there's the first outer circle. I'm doing it very light because, again, we might be erasing these today. Okay, now I'm going to do that outer one. So again, I'm curving, trying to match this curve. Curve and connect, curve and connect. If you need it to curve more, just go back and change your pencil line a little bit. If you have a compass and you would rather use that, of course, please use it. I just like to make these using very little special tools. All right, do you notice that this one looks different than our other ones? Because it only has the 6 sections. Okay, go ahead and finish getting that grid in. All right, then pick up your pen. All right, so this mandala today is going to be using a lot of curves, and in doing these curves, we're going to be making some seed shape patterns, like a curve on the outside and a curve this way. They kind of look like pointed ovals. So we're going to be doing a little bit with that shape today. See if this will focus and not move around. All right, I think we're okay. All right, so I'm going to skip this middle area for a moment, and I'm going to go up to this center area up here. So we have the middle circle, we're going to the next one, and I'm going to put in a seed pattern over that line. Then I'm going to come to this one and put in that seed shape again. So I'm doing these curves that meet at a point. And I'm trying to keep them around the same size. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the center, and I'm going to put a little dot in the middle, and I'm going to follow that line up and then part way into that little seed shape, and I'm going to put a dot. So I come from the center, I go up into that seed shape, probably about halfway, and add a little black dot. It looks like it could spin, like in the wind. Okay, now we're going to go to that very first one that we made up here and to the right. And I'm going to start at the point. I'm going to put in a little bit wider curve and come down to the point. Wider curve and come down. So I'm putting 2 curves on each side. Starting at the point and then coming down to the bottom point. Then I go to the next one, I add this little curve, curve, and curve, curve. Go nice and slow and go from one point to the other point. I'm just putting 2, but if you would like to do more or less, please do that. Okay, hopefully you've got that about done. All right, now I'm going to go back to my pencil for a moment. And now I'm going to take each of these 6 sections and I'm going to divide them in half. So I'll start right up here at the top and I'm going to put a line going up like this. And then one right in between here and here. Coming from the center, working my way out and dividing each of those in half with my pencil. Okay, now we're going to do another layer of seed shapes, but we're going to do them on our new lines we just put in. So we're not going to do it right above the old ones, we're going to do it in between. So up here, I'm going to put in that seed shape, and depending on how wide or narrow I made this outer edge, they might be larger or smaller than the ones inside. It doesn't matter, I said they didn't have to be even. So then I skip a line and I put a seed pod over here. And I skip and put one here. Remember, we're only drawing them in between 2 previous ones, which means we have to skip one of our lines and go to the next. Once you get those in, we're going to start at the middle and we're going to trace that line up into the halfway point and add our dot. Trace that line up, add your dot. Make sure you can see that dot. Don't make it too tiny. This is such a fun pattern, isn't it? It reminds me of like a clock in the 1970s or 60s. I don't even know. I just think it looks kind of cool. Okay, then I'm going to put in those C shapes from point to point again. I'm doing 2 on each side. You can do however many you would like. This is so much fun. All right, get all of those done. I'm just going back and touching up those little circles a bit, making them nice and bold. Okay. If you didn't get those done yet, go ahead and push pause. But if you are done, we're going to keep going. All right, so now we're going to go to these little lines that are still showing in that outer ring. And I'm going to put in a line over it. I'm just going to trace it like that. And I'm going to end it with a circle on the outer edge of my mandala. So I'm going to put a little line out and a circle. I like how we've just been repeating straight lines, little dots, and curves. Not much has changed. Okay, now we're going to put in a V shape. So I'm going to make it go to the middle of this area here, not necessarily from point to point in the middle, but just sort of in the middle of this area. So I'm going to put a shape up there and there. But I want to leave room on both sides because I'm going to put in a curve, 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 and curve. Okay, let me do the next one. So I'm putting them in the middle of these areas with enough room to put a curve on the top and a curve on the bottom. Look at how that's filling in. Make that V shape. And then put in that seed shape with a curve on each side. right, then I'm going to take each of those that we just made and I'm going to turn them into little leaves by putting a couple of V shapes, maybe 3 in each one. So V, V, V. V, V, V. I love relaxing and making the same lines over and over again. That's where the relaxing part comes in. They're so cute. Okay, when you get those done, I hope I'm not rushing you. I'm going to go into the center area, and there's a lot of lines now. We've got a lot going on, but I want to put in some more little leaf shapes, and I'm going to put them on these long ones. So I'm at the top of my paper right now, and I've got this long stem here and then some short ones. On this long one, I'm going to put a curve on each side and those 3 little V's if I can fit them. It's a really small spot. If you don't want to do this, you don't have to. But I'm putting them just on these long ones, not the short ones. And look at how nicely that's filling up the middle with a shape that we've already made. And then it looks like each of these little plants has its own little leaves on the bottom. So cute. Remember just to do the long ones, not the short ones. It's fun to make mandalas where we kind of add different layers and then we go back in and add some details. I tend to do that whenever I create these. I just sort of go back and forth with filling in different things. Okay, so if you've got that done, we're going to do something else around the outer edge. I'm not going to put a line out here of where I want things to land. You could if you want to and maybe make it about a pencil width, but I'm just going to start drawing and it's okay if mine are not quite even. So on this little circle here, I'm going to start at the bottom of the circle and I'm going to give it a curve like that. So I'm orienting just the top. Then I'm going to give it a second curve. I go to the next one, give it 1, 2. 1, We have one more outer layer to make, and then a few more details and some shading, and we will be done. It's amazing what we can make in about 30 to 40 minutes. Okay, you ready? All right, this part I'm going to do in pencil, and then I'm going to go back and trace over it in pen, just because we're making some kind of big lines, and if we don't like how they turn out, we can erase them and fix them. Okay, so I've got this cute little bud here with the dark and the little circles. I'm going to make a bump going over it, and I'm going to go from the top of this little plant to the top of this one. So I want to put in a curve like that. Because it's kind of a big line, some of you might not enjoy that kind of big swoop. It might be kind of hard to make it even. You are welcome to skip this if you would like. But I think it's going to be cool, so I think you'll like it. All right, I'm going to go from the top of this one to the top of this one. And I'm going to show you what we're going to do because I actually may have a little bit easier way to do this. So I'm going to show you both ways. Okay, I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to trace over this. And I'm going to show you what we're doing. So we have this little curve like we've been making, and I'm going to put in a straight line from there up to the top of that line in a straight line down this way. And then I'm going to put in like half of my V that would be making a leaf. See that? So my thought on this was, if you wanted to make the second half of this leaf, you could make the whole V's in there. But I kind of like how this made this little triangular shape and a little point, but then we still put in like the shape of the leaf, even though it's not a leaf. Does that make sense? So I wanted to show you the easier way to do that might be to go from the top of this flower and just make your straight line and the top of this flower. And then put in your curve like that. It's up to you. And I think I'm going to put in more than 3 because these are larger. Like that. Okay, I'm going to go back to my pencil, make sure I like these. I'm going to stick with the curve, but if you want to do the points first, go ahead. Going from this one to this one. And this one to this one. Do it in pencil first, make sure you like it. Now, because we made these by hand, like look at this one up here. My little bud is way over to the left of this bump. I've got a lot more space on this side than this side. And I don't care, it's okay. I think it looks lovely. All right, then go back with your pen, fill in that bump, and then go from the top here up to that point, or I guess up to that line, and then put in some little shapes as if you're making half of the V. Okay, same thing on this one. putting about 5 just because of how large they are. I think this looks so amazing. So every time I make a mandala, I think this is number 67 or 68. Let me check while you're catching up there. It is number 68. And if I'm making mandalas just on my own, like in a little book, they tend to be very similar. I tend to do a lot of little bumps, a lot of leafy patterns. They're very floral. And when I'm trying to show you examples, I'm trying to do different techniques every single time. So this one, instead of making like a layer in a circle and then layering the next one and filling it and the next one and filling it, we just did all of these sort of crossing of the lines, and we have a lot of beautiful white space in the background. But again, we used very few shapes. Like we used the lines, the little curves, some black dots, and that's about it. That V shape is just some little lines, and we just kind of kept repeating. And I love doing that in a mandala, so I don't have to think of something brand new to put in each layer. Okay, I'm going to take my eraser and I'm going to erase some of these lines. And I've got a little bit more detail to add with my pen. And then we're going to do some shading. Look at that. It looks so neat when the grid is gone. Okay, are we all caught up? All right, so I'm going to add a couple little details before I shade. So one thing I'm going to do is I love these little dark black spots that we have, and I'm going to put one in the center just to kind of bring it all together. It's really small. And then I'm also going to hover one in each of these little areas. And if you don't like yours kind of hovering, then add a little line connecting it. I like that. Okay, now I'm going to go into these little, I guess they're like a little flower shape. And I have the middle section that has the line and the dot. I'm going to go into the next section and I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, and on the other side 1, 2, 3. Very tiny little detail, but I just love it. I'm going to do it in this one out here as well. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And this outer one. I'm not going to do it to my middle ones because my lines are really narrow, but if you would like to, you can. I'm going to show you an alternative, okay? You just watch first, because if you don't like this, you don't have to do it. But I don't have a lot of room for those dots. So what if I color that in, that middle area? Isn't that pretty? It just changes what's going on. So I'm going to do that middle band of each of these. Again, you do not have to do that. Maybe you want to do something completely different in there, or maybe you just want to leave it. But I always feel like each little detail that we add just changes the composition so much and adds so much interest. So I kind of like that. So just by adding dots or adding some dark areas, we can make it look amazing. Okay. All right, I think I'm going to be done, but I do want to talk about more that you could do, okay? All right, you could go back, you could add some little dots in the outer edges of these little orbs here. You could add another layer around the outside of another border. You could take these little dots and aura them and make them match the little ones up here that have those little lines around them. There are so many ways that you can keep on going, keep on adding. It'd be pretty to add a little dark dot underneath these on the lines. Like, just have fun. You don't have to stop when I stop. Okay, I'm going to put my initials and do some shading. All right, so this one has a lot of white space all around the background, and I really like that, so I don't want to change that too much. I don't want to add a lot of graphite to this, but I am going to add some to each of these little blooms or buds or whatever you want to call them. And I'm going to add some on the bottom and on the top. And when I take my blending tool and just push that a little bit, it just gives that a little bit of roundness. So a little bit on the top and on the bottom. Top and the bottom. Very little, you do not need a lot. I am making sure that when I blend it all the way to the edges of that little orb, that little circle. While I'm on this outer area there, I'm going to add a little to the top and the bottom of each of these leaves. Just gonna go all the way around. I'm putting such a tiny bit in there. There's lots of different ways to shade a leaf, but for these, because they're kind of small, I'm just putting a little bit in the top and the bottom. And hopefully that will give them a little bit of dimension, as if maybe they're sort of curling towards the back, curling away from us. Just that little bit of shading. For my center ones where I added the dark ink, I'm going to put a little bit on the top and the bottom of those, and I'm going to push it up into those 3 white areas. You know, the one in the center and then the ones on the sides. And I'm not pushing down very hard because I don't want to upset that ink. So I'm just putting a little bit, bottom, top, bottom, top. And I'm pushing it a little bit down each of those 3 white areas. And again, this just helps give the illusion that this is round and not flat. Two more places I'm going to add shading. I'm going to add shading in the center around that dark circle I made so that I can push it up a tiny bit into those leaves. And then I'm going to add a little bit in each of these corners of the top half leaves, or whatever you want to call these. So each of those little nooks, the top and the bottom of those. And that's the technique we've used throughout this mandala, is just kind of that top and bottom. So it should look really pretty. See, I'm just pushing those out towards the center, but leaving the middle white. And that is it. We are done. I love this one. What a fun pattern. All right, I hope that you enjoyed that. And if you did, I hope that you've been following along for all of them. And hopefully we can keep coming up with some fun ideas and keep going with these. But I hope that you have an absolutely wonderful week. If you would like to share your work, please go to Let's Tangle on Facebook. And I do show and tell Sundays, sometimes show and tell Saturdays, and you can share what you've been working on. I would love to see it. So thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.